Y'all, I'm sorry. I'm still knee deep in here over in these books, just trying to search for answers or, you know, reminded of things that I forget. I'm trying to figure out which parts to share with y'all because there's so much in here that's like hits. So I'm reading The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm. So in the book, he kind of lays out his argument on, is love an art? You know, there's a kind of an assumption that love is just something that you are naturally good at, that it's not something, or that it's innate, you know, and that it's not a skill that you can learn and develop and understand. So he breaks down his theory of love and what love means, and it, you know, whether it's an art or is it a science, you know. Or he asks the question, is love an art? You know, is it innate? Does it just come naturally? And then he goes into his theory of love and how he understands it. So he's breaking down his theory. And in this part, he's going through the objects of love. So I'll just read. Love is not primarily a relationship to a specific person. It is an attitude, an orientation of character which determines the relatedness of a person to the world as a whole, not toward one object of love. If a person loves only one other person and is indifferent to the rest of his fellow men, his love is not love, but a symbiotic attachment or an enlarged egotism. Yet most people believe that love is constituted by the object, not by the faculty. In fact, they even believe that it is proof of the intensity of their love when they do not love anybody except the loved person. This is the same fallacy which we have already mentioned above, because one does not see that love is an activity, a power of the soul. One believes that all that is necessary to find is the right object, and that everything goes by itself afterward. This attitude can be compared to that of a man who wants to paint, but who, instead of learning the art, claims that he has to just wait for the right object and that he will paint beautifully when he finds it. If I truly love one person, I love all persons. I love the world. I love life. If I can say to somebody else, I love you, I must be able to say, I love in you everybody. I love through you the world. I love in you also myself. Saying that love is an orientation which refers to all and not to one does not imply, however, the idea that there are no differences between various types of love, which depend on the kind of object which is loved. Okay, so then he goes into the different kinds of love, or kind of objects which are loved. So there's brotherly love, motherly love, erotic love, self-love, love of God, what else? Oh, love of God goes for a while. And that was it. Okay. Yeah, language is really limited, especially the English language, in the words that we use to describe the way we feel about people. And so yeah, him breaking it down in this way really helps for me to understand the different types of loves that there is out there, and that loving someone isn't based on who they are. Like, I don't love you because of you per se. I love because I'm a loving person, and I end up falling in love with something in every person that I meet. So yeah, this really helped for me to orient my heart and understand love and the practice of it, and kind of detaching myself from thinking of love in a very specific way, where it's a romantic attachment, or even just being attached to someone and codependent, and thinking my love was evidenced through that person and not just through me, if that makes sense. Yeah, because I've questioned this for my son a lot, and my love for him is like evaluating my relationship to him as my loved object, and asking and like trying to correct my orientation of like, do I love him because of what he gives me, or or do I love him for who he is, separate from me? Like, and it was hard to identify that for a while, because of course, like, the process of child development, that he wasn't his own person yet. So, and in the hardest stages, it's like you gotta search for the why behind the day-to-day struggle of that shit. So initially, it was definitely my love for him and the attachment that I had to, like, because it fed me so much, it gave me so much meaning, like seeing my son develop, and so initially it was that. And now, I think starting when my son was like 8 or 9 maybe, like, I've been feeling more and more of this separation from him, and having to, and like seeing him develop and grow as his own person, and seeing his personality and who he's becoming, Anyways, so then I turned it to, I wanted to read the motherly love. We have already dealt with the nature of motherly love in a previous section. Motherly love, as I said there, is unconditional affirmation of the child's life and his needs. But one important addition to this description must be made here. Affirmation of the child's life has 2 aspects. One is the care and responsibility absolutely necessary for the preservation of the child's life and his growth. The other aspect goes further than mere preservation. It is the attitude which instills in the child a love for living, which gives him the feeling it is good to be alive. It is good to be a little boy or girl. It is good to be on this earth. These 2 aspects of motherly love are expressed very succinctly in the biblical story of creation. God creates the world and man. This corresponds to the simple care and affirmation of existence. But God goes beyond this minimum requirement. On each day after nature and man is created, God says, "It is good." Motherly love in this second step makes the child feel it is good to have been born. It instills in the child the love for life, not only the wish to remain alive. The same idea may be taken to be expressed in another biblical symbolism, the promised land. Land is always a mother symbol, and is described as flowing with milk and honey. Milk is the symbol of the first aspect of love, that of care and affirmation. Honey symbolizes the sweetness of life, the love for it, and the happiness in being alive. Most mothers are capable of giving milk, but only a minority of giving honey too. In order to be able to give honey, a mother must not only be a good mother, but a happy person. And this aim is not achieved by many. The effect on the child can hardly be exaggerated. Mother's love for life is as infectious as her anxiety is. Both attitudes have a deep effect on the child's whole personality. One can distinguish indeed among children and adults those who got only milk and those who got milk and honey. In contrast to brotherly love and erotic love, which are love between equals, the relationship of mother and child is by its very nature one of inequality, where one needs all the help and the other gives it. It is for this altruistic, unselfish character that motherly love has been considered the highest kind of love and the most sacred of all emotional bonds. It seems, however, that the real achievement of motherly love lies not in the mother's love for the small infant, but in her love for the growing child. Actually, the vast majority of mothers are loving mothers as long as the infant is small and still completely dependent on them. Most women want children, are happy with the newborn child, and eager in their care for it. This is so in spite of the fact that they do not get anything in return from the child except a smile or the expression of satisfaction in his face. It seems that this attitude of love is partly rooted in an instinctive equipment to be found in animals as well as in the human female. But whatever the weight of this instinctive factor may be, there are also specifically human psychological factors which are responsible for this type of motherly love. And one may be found in the narcissistic element in motherly love. Inasmuch as the infant is still felt to be a part of herself, her love and infatuation may be a satisfaction of her narcissism. Another motivation may be found in a mother's wish for power or possession. The child, being helpless and completely subject to her will, is a natural object of satisfaction for domineering and possessive women. Frequent as these motivations are, they are probably less important and less universal than the one which can be called the need for transcendence. This need for transcendence is one of the most basic needs of a man, rooted in the fact of his self-awareness and the fact that he is not satisfied with the role of the creature, that he cannot accept himself as dice thrown out of the cup. He needs to feel as the creator, as one transcending the passive role of being created. There are many ways of achieving this satisfaction of creation. The most natural and also the easiest one to achieve is the mother's care and love for her creation. She transcends herself in the infant. Her love for it gives her life meaning and significance. In the very inability of the male to satisfy his need for transcendence by bearing children lies his urge to transcend himself by the creation of man-made things and of ideas. But the child must grow. It must emerge from mother's womb, from mother's breast. It must eventually become a completely separate human being. The very essence of motherly love is to care for the child's growth, and that means to want the child's separation from herself. Here lies the basic difference to erotic love. In erotic love, two people who are separate become one. In motherly love, two people who were one become separate. The mother must not only tolerate, she must wish and support the child's separation. It is only at this stage that motherly love becomes such a difficult task that it requires unselfishness, the ability to give everything and to want nothing but the happiness of the loved one. It is also at this stage that many mothers fail in their task of motherly love. The narcissistic, the domineering, the possessive woman can succeed in being a loving mother as long as the child is small. Only the real loving woman, the woman who is happier in giving than in taking, who is firmly rooted in her own existence, can be a loving mother when the child is in the process of separation. Motherly love for the growing child, love which wants nothing for oneself, is perhaps the most difficult form of love to be achieved, and all the more deceptive because of the ease with which a mother can love her small infant. But just because of this difficulty, a woman can be a truly loving mother only if she can love. If she is able to love her husband, other children, strangers, all human beings. The woman who is not capable of love in this sense can be an affectionate mother as long as the child is small, but she cannot be a loving mother, the test of which is the willingness to bear separation, and even after the separation, to go on loving. Damn. Yeah, I know this is the test. Can I still go on loving even when I have to separate from? Can I still instill a love for life? I think it made me, I still, on one hand, I'm reflecting on maybe just letting him go and letting it be his decision, and when he's ready to come home and when he calls me, I will be on the road as soon as possible, because his dad is only able to get away with this because he's basing it off of my son saying that he doesn't want to see me, and my son has to stand up to him to combat that narrative. And every time I see, anyways, whether he really feels that way or not, I think I've come to the conclusion I don't care if that's how he feels as a 12-year-old. You don't get to make life or long-term decisions based on short-term feelings. That's just, to say that you never want to see your mom again at 12 years old is a pretty consequential thing. And I don't think that it is really coming from him. I really think his dad is kind of reinforcing this narrative on him. But anyways, regardless of that, oh, say hi to the kitty. Look at the kitty. regardless, anyways, yeah. From the evidence I've been able to collect, I know it's not been a good situation for him down there, so I know it's not best for him to be there. But I guess I'm just thinking through kind of best case scenario. I wouldn't have to fight this hard if my son just gave me, stood up to his dad and said, no, Dad, I want to go see my mom, And I'm just reflecting on his life and journey and what he has to learn and grow from, He's going to have his own lessons to learn in life. And if I want to try to practice being the mom, that loves the growing child, then, maybe letting go of the outcome of the fight. And when my son is ready, he'll be ready and I'll be there. Go into the practice of love. This is good. Thus far, I have discussed what is needed for the practice of any art. Now I shall discuss those qualities which are of specific significance for the ability to love. According to what I said about the nature of love, the main condition for the achievement of love is the overcoming of one's narcissism. The narcissistic orientation is one in which one experiences as real only that which exists within oneself, while the phenomena in the outside world have no reality in themselves, but are experienced only from the viewpoint of their being useful or dangerous to one. The opposite pole to narcissism is objectivity. It is the faculty to see people and things as they are, objectively, and to be able to separate this objective picture from a picture which is formed by one's desires and fears. All forms of psychosis show the inability to be objective to an extreme degree. For the insane person, the only reality that exists is that within him, that of his fears and desires. He sees the world outside as symbols of his inner world as his creation. All of us do the same when we dream. In the dream, we produce events, we stage dreams, which are the expression of our wishes and fears, although sometimes also of our insights and judgment. And while we are asleep, we are convinced that the product of our dreams is as real as the reality which we perceive in our waking state. The insane person or the dreamer fails completely in having an objective view of the world outside, but all of us are more or less insane or more or less asleep. All of us have an unobjective view of the world, one which is distorted by our narcissistic orientation. Do I need to give examples? Anyone can find them easily by watching himself, his neighbors, and by reading the newspaper. They vary in the degree of the narcissistic distortion of reality. A woman, for instance, calls up the doctor saying that she wants to come to his office that same afternoon. The doctor answers that he is not free this same afternoon, but that he can see her the next day. Her answer is, "But doctor, I live only 5 minutes from your office." She could not understand his explanation that it does not save him time, that for her the distance is so short. She experiences the situation narcissistically. Since she saves time, he saves time. The only reality to her is she herself. Less extreme, or perhaps only less obvious, are the distortions which are commonplace in interpersonal relationships. How many parents experience the child's reactions in terms of his being obedient, of giving them pleasure, of being a credit to them, and so forth, instead of perceiving or even being interested in what the child feels for and by himself? How many husbands have a picture of their wives as being domineering because their own attachment to mother makes them interpret any demand as a restriction of their freedom? How many wives think their husbands are ineffective or stupid because they do not live up to the fantasy picture of a shining knight which they might have built up as children? The lack of objectivity as far as foreign nations are concerned is notorious. From one day to another nation is made out to be utterly depraved and fiendish, while one's own nation stands for everything that is good and noble. Every action of the enemy is judged by one standard, every action of oneself by another. Even good deeds by the enemy are considered a sign of particular devilishness meant to deceive us in the world, while our bad deeds are necessary and justified by our noble goals which they serve. Indeed, if one examines the relationship between nations as well as between individuals, one comes to the conclusion that objectivity is the exception, and a greater or lesser degree of narcissistic distortion is the rule. The faculty to think objectively is reason. The emotional attitude behind reason is that of humility. To be objective, to use one's reason, is possible only if one has achieved an attitude of humility. If one has emerged from the dreams of omniscience and omnipotence which one has as a child. In terms of this discussion of the practice of the art of loving, this means love being dependent on the relative absence of narcissism. It requires the development of humility, objectivity, and reason. One's whole life must be devoted to this aim. Humility and objectivity are indivisible, just as love is. I cannot be truly objective about my family if I cannot be objective about the stranger, and vice versa. If I want to learn the art of loving, I must strive for objectivity in every situation and become sensitive to the situations where I am not objective. I must try to see the difference between my picture of a person and his behavior, as it is narcissistically distorted, and the person's reality as it exists regardless of my interests, needs, and fears. To have acquired the capacity for objectivity and reason is half the road to achieving the art of loving. But it must be acquired with regard to everybody with whom one comes in contact. If someone would want to reserve his objectivity for the loved person and think he can dispense with it in his relationship to the rest of the world, he will soon discover that he fails both here and there. Oh my God. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just, because this is, the ability to love depends on one's capacity to emerge from narcissism and from the incestuous fixation to mother and clan. It depends on our capacity to grow, to develop a productive orientation in our relationship toward the world and ourselves. This process of emergence, of birth, of waking up requires one quality as a necessary condition: faith. The practice of the art of loving requires the practice of faith. What is faith? Is faith necessarily a matter of belief in God or in religious doctrines? Is faith by necessity in contrast to or divorced from reason and rational thinking? Even to begin to understand the problem of faith, one must differentiate between rational and irrational faith. By irrational faith, I understand the belief in a person or an idea which is based on one's submission to irrational authority. In contrast, rational faith is a conviction which is rooted in one's own experience of thought or feeling. Rational faith is not primarily belief in something, but the quality of certainty and firmness with which our convictions have. Faith is a character trait pervading the whole personality rather than a specific belief. This is such a great book. I could read this, or maybe I should. I do want to talk about this, narcissistic, overcoming one's own narcissism, is narcissistic orientation, in kind of having this lens on where you view things and its personal impact on you, right? Or you view things through this personal lens of how it impacts you. I think I'm saying that in a more gracious way, because I do still think that having that lens is important. I think it is the lens of the ego, of your boundaries, which you don't rid yourself ever of your ego. You just learn how to tame it. This idea that you need to get rid of your ego it is there and was built as a protective embodiment of and development of self, and the asserting yourself in the world. So I think when we learn to look at things objectively, you can see things for their function rather than you look at things for their function. So I think the ego serves a purpose, and that a narcissism, this kind of narcissistic orientation, which is the lens in which one experiences as real only that which exists within oneself, while the phenomenon in the outside world have no reality in themselves, but are experienced only from the viewpoint of their being useful or dangerous to one. I think, in a capitalist society, the development of this narcissistic lens, I think, is incentivized through, just how we have to survive here and how hard it is to like get up every day and have to go to work and put the mask on and plug your nose and feel like you're in a rat with like. I like when I was in this point in my journey of kind of developing and sharpening that like narcissistic lens. Like I felt like I had I boundaried myself into, and I had to separate myself from people because I was always taking on other people's problems and I didn't have no boundaries and whatnot. So anyways, for me, I know in my journey, I needed to like develop this kind of lens to be able to look at how something just impacts me personally without having to take into consideration like what you might have been going through and feeling at the, you know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah, I think I did swing to kind of the extreme end in developing out that lens, which that's what happens. I ain't mad at it. Like I needed to have that level of kind of authority in my life of not putting up with nobody's shit. I don't know, like, and figure out what those boundaries were for me. But yeah, I read so much. I don't even know what I was thinking with all of this. This is good. Hold on. In America, here's how they did it. Financial freedom, my only hope. Fuck living rich and dying broke. I bought some artwork for $1 million. 2 years later, that shit worth $8 million. That shit worth $8 million. They to get this shit to my children. Y'all think I was bougie, and I'm like, it's fine, but I'm trying to give you $1 million worth of game for $9.99. 4, 2, or 8. Okay. Where I want to start with this. All right. The average person has a sensitivity toward his bodily processes. He notices changes or even small amounts of pain. This kind of bodily sensitivity is relatively easy to experience because most persons have an image of how it feels to be well. The same sensitivity toward one's mental process is much more difficult because many people have never known a person who functions optimally. They take the psychic functioning of their parents and relatives or of the social group they have been born into as the norm, and as long as they do not differ from these, they feel normal and without interest in observing anything. There are many people, for instance, who have never seen a loving person or a person with integrity or courage or concentration. It is quite obvious that in order to be sensitive to oneself, one has to have an image of complete, healthy human functioning. And how is one to acquire such an experience if one has not had it in one's own childhood or later in life? There is certainly no simple answer to this question, but the question points to one very critical factor in our own education system. While we teach knowledge, we are losing that teaching which is the most important one for human development. The teaching which can only be given by the simple presence of a mature, loving person. In previous epochs of our own culture, or in China and India, the man most highly valued was the person with outstanding spiritual qualities. Even the teacher was not only or even primarily a source of information, but his function was to convey certain human attitudes. In contemporary capitalistic society, and the same holds true for Russian communism, the men suggested for admiration and emulation are everything but bearers of significant spiritual qualities. Those are essentially in the public eye who give the average man a sense of vicarious satisfaction. Movie stars, radio entertainers, columnists, important business or government figures, these are all the models for emulation. Their main qualification for this function is often that they have succeeded in making the news. Yet the situation does not seem to be altogether hopeless. If one considers the fact that a man like Albert Swisher could become famous in the United States, if one visualizes the many possibilities to make our youth familiar with living and historical personalities who show what human beings can achieve as human beings and not as entertainers in the broad sense of the word, if one thinks of the great works of literature and art of all ages, there seems to be a chance of creating a vision of good human functioning and hints of sensitivity to malfunctioning. If we should not succeed in keeping alive a vision of mature life, then indeed we are confronted with the probability that our whole cultural tradition will break down. This tradition is not primarily based on the transmission of certain kinds of knowledge, but of certain kinds of human traits. If the coming generations will not see these traits anymore, a 5,000-year-old culture will break down, even if its knowledge is transmitted and further developed. Yeah, that's a word right there. Like, that made me think of this practicing away, which is just really good, and talks about how to embody the practices of and teachings of Jesus, and how important it is to model behavior, you know. I mean, that's how we learn. I don't see how we think. You know, one of the things that at my last job we used to say, that I really appreciated, is that we do not convince people to join our side because we think we have the right ideas and the right arguments. We convince people to join our side by giving them a different way to experience themselves. And like, I just think we take for granted the importance of experience, or maybe exposure therapy is what I'm thinking of, or, you know, modeling, and I think I said this before, like the cliche, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, and how, like, we hear that phrase and we assume that the ornery one is the horse who isn't taking the drink, rather than the rider for thinking you could make a wild beast take a drink. Like, if it's thirsty, it's going to take a drink. But if it's not thirsty, it's not going to take a drink. Like, thirst has to arise naturally from the will. And, you can't force someone to take an action that they're not ready to take yet, that goes against what their will is ready for. And yeah, I don't think we appreciate the kind of process of learning and just illuminating the path, and like creating the environment that allows for them to be a learner and make a different decision. Sorry, I just got a text. Yeah. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, thirst has to come from the will. It could only be an internal come forth. It can't be pushed on. Not if you want it to stand on its own. Not if you don't want somebody coming back to you tomorrow for the answer because they don't know what the question is or how to think. Maybe I should read from this. Be with Jesus, become like him, do as he did. So, we actually never finished the Bible study and going through this while I was living there. I was trying to, work as much as I could, and anyway, so we just never found time to get back to it, but it was a great book. This is good. All right, this is find your inner monk. One final thing. Following Jesus doesn't work as a hobby. It's not an optional extra to the main point of your life. Your career, school, family, sports, or whatever it is for you. We simply can't add Jesus to the top of our already overbusy, consumeristic, emotionally unhealthy, hyper-individualistic, digitally distracted, media-saturated, undisciplined modern life. It's not that it's bad. It's that it won't work. Full stop. We must come to realize that following Jesus is the main point of life. To borrow a term from the world of activism, it's about centering Jesus, making him the dominant voice over your own. This doesn't mean you need to quit your job and become a monk, but it does mean you need to find your inner monk. The Japanese-Canadian pastor King Shigema something wrote, "Every one of us has a monk or nun embryo inside of us." The scholar Greg Peters called it the monkhood of all believers. Another scholar called it the monastic impulse. There's a monastic impulse of the spirit in all of us, a part of our hearts that craves quiet prayer, solitude, and contemplation, and that has a genuine desire mixed with a tinge of healthy fear for deep, vulnerable, heart-to-heart relationships with other followers of the way. Our inner monk. If we do not come to desire some kind of inner monk, or none, long, uninterrupted times of quiet prayer, days of fasting, disciplines of abstinence from our culture's rampant, unbridled pursuits of pleasure, hedonism, and materialism, we simply will not make it very far on the spiritual path. This, of course, will take a lot of time. Following Jesus is not convenient, quick, or easy. Nothing meaningful in life is. And there is no way to apprentice Jesus without him interfering in your life any more than there is a way to apprentice under a master of any craft and not have them disrupt how you live. That's the whole point of learning under a master. You want them to disrupt how you live. And yet, can you imagine who we could become if we really gave our whole lives over to following Jesus? The kind of life that we could enjoy, the kind of community we could become together. You can do this, and you can do it right where you are, in your city, with your job, at your stage of life. Today, you can find your inner monk. One early Christian ascetic gave this advice to regular people like you and me, people not living in the distraction-free zone of a monastery. Find in the busy city the desert of the monks. I believe the invitation of Jesus in our day is to live as desert fathers and mothers in the middle of the city, to live with depth and serenity and focus right in the middle of the noise and traffic and hurry of the modern world. The both and of the active, contemplative life. Will this cost us? Yeah. We will have to die 1,000 deaths, but it will absolutely be worth it. With Jesus, you always gain far more than you give up. In closing, I offer you this from the prologue to the rule of Saint Benedict, the rule that started it all, dating to the 6th century. In drawing up its regulations, we hope to set down nothing harsh, nothing burdensome, the good of all concerned, however may prompt us to a little strictness in order to amend faults and to safeguard love. Do not be daunted immediately by fear and run away from the road that leads to salvation. It is bound to be narrow at the outset. But as we progress in this way of life and in faith, we shall run on the path of God's commandments, our hearts overflowing with the inexpressible delights of love. What is one small step that you can take this week in practicing the way of Jesus? Or is there something you feel a stirring in your heart to lay down, to leave behind? What would happen if you were to say yes to the impulse of God's Spirit inside of you? Do not fear and do not run away. The path before you is long and at times is hard, but is overflowing with the inexpressible delights of love. Dog, you know when you just like, thank you. I mean, I needed that. I really did. I needed all of this. Like, it sucks when you, like, you know you're valid in your pain and your suffering and the anger. Like, no. I know I'm valid in this because I've been told by too many people they can't even imagine not being without their kid, like, let alone just having to sit in it for a year and having to fight all the, you know. And, like, the battle in me has always been the armoring and closing and protecting and having the protective stance and just like ready to take whoever out, and between that and trying to learn to let go and to love and to just like find some kind of understanding and like and make sense of like why this happened. What was I supposed to learn from this? What how do you like as a mom accept like I just gotta let my baby go right now? And I gotta because I'm powerless to fight. I can't fight anymore. I can't lean into that energy no more. Y'all, it almost killed me. I don't want to be angry no more at this world. Like, it is what it is. This shit sucks, dude. I have to be here. Like, how can I just enjoy myself while I'm fucking here, man? You know, before I went down to Kentucky, actually, I was like, because I just moved into my new place. I just finished, like, getting it set up and getting all the things out the boxes and stuff. And I was working and really, like, and I was doing the poetry everywhere and just feeling like I really just, like, manifested the life of my dream. Oh, y'all ain't even explain, like, I live in the perfect spot. Like, when I imagined coming back home and being a part of my community again, this is like, this was the visual that I had, was this location and this like view that I have. Y'all can't see it because I don't want y'all to know exactly where I live, but it's in the hood, you know, and I, like, this is where I grew up. I felt protected living here growing up. Like, I couldn't go nowhere without somebody being like, Herb's kids. It was so embarrassing back then as a kid, you know, but like now as an adult, I'm realizing that shit was protection, dude. Like, I was really out in the streets, nigga. If my dad didn't have all them eyes on me like that, I could have been in a lot more trouble than what I got into. So that was like my idea, like why I chose to live back over here. Because I'm like, I grew up here. I know these people. I have all these eyes. And like, I know my son's a teenager. He's going to be wanting to like be out. And, you know, he's at this stage where he's got his own social circle in life and shit that he's doing. So I was coming back home, like, just wanting to have that, like, community again in the village. But I forgot they burned the village down. And that's why I left. Like, we were already hanging on by a thread as a family, just not really able to love each other in the way that we want to, you know, because we're just so, like, trying to survive ourselves. You know, I come back home, niggas is struggling. Man, people thought I was coming home to take their resources. I was at my dad's house, and my brother got mad at me for eating the cereal. I said, I forgot. I really forgot. Because when you are making a certain amount of money, like, and you're able to buy the things that you need, you're not too, like, you don't care that somebody just ate one bowl of cereal. That's literally all I ate was one bowl. I was eating the cereal, and he's like, next time you eat it, you want any of my cereal, you need to ask. Mind you, I asked my dad, like, and my dad was, if I could have some cereal. My dad said, yeah. I'm not knowing niggas got separate foods and shit. Like, this shit, that's just a small example. I don't even want to, because I'm not trying to, like, air my family out or anything. I'm just kind of painting a picture of what my best case scenario was. What the vision I had in my head was coming back home was I would be welcomed with open arms. And then I fucking forgot niggas is poor and struggling and niggas fighting for their own lives. But anyways, I'm out of that now. And now I'm got my own place, and, you know, was starting to, like, feel, you know, like I built my life back up again. I had everything that I wanted. You know, and I kept it simple. Like, I just want to be able to serve and work with these specific populations and have some of my time, you know. And yeah, and then I was sitting in the house, like, in this beautiful setup, like, and there's just not the life in it yet that I'm craving. So yeah, that's what like, I felt the void, and then I had a trigger that pulled me in even deeper into the void, and it brought up all this overwhelming intensity of not having my son and everything that happened this last year. That's why we're here now, because now I'm just documenting. I just need to. Anyways. Alright, I'm emptied out. I might come back. I'm still sitting, just reading.